what is happening with Chainsaw Man? Like seriously, because at one point I feel like, okay, I have a decent grasp on where the story might be going, loosely, right? And then you get this chapter and it throws everything out the window. You might have been sitting comfortably, now you're kind of shook to your core and very much confused with what is going on. Typical Fujimoto fashion, this is how he likes to throw curveballs here and there, and of course, when you get such a massive curveball, he always takes a 2-week break. So we don't get a chapter next week, but we get one after. That's a long time to wait. To start us off, let's work backwards, okay? Let's talk about the individual that is revealed at the end of this chapter. We have another fake Chainsaw Man. This time we actually get to see them. Not their face, it's very obscure. The artistry behind it is really cool, but we don't know who it is at all. Purposefully designed, obviously. Now this brings up a lot of questions because you go through this chapter not expecting it to happen. It's not built up or led into it. It's kind of just there. Very similar to the Yuko situation, right? So now we're playing into the territory of fake Chainsaw Man, and it brings up the question once again, who is it? What is it? How is it a thing? Firstly, kind of the more open theory that I've seen people talk about is that this is the fear of Chainsaw Man in itself. So not the Chainsaw Devil, but more so the fear, a new one, based around Chainsaw Man. So this technically would be the Chainsaw Man Devil. Now personally, I don't really like this idea. I think the concept behind it is pretty cool, very interesting in a lot of ways that you could explore it, but I also feel like it's a little bit redundant. It doesn't really add anything valuable or new to the story other than a mere copycat of Chainsaw Man, but then again, how is it even possible? Firstly, Chainsaw Man isn't solely hated or even feared. There is a lot of love for Chainsaw Man, both in hell and with humans. Now we know that fear and hate and any sort of negative emotion towards devils creates and powers them. The more fear towards that thing, the more powerful they become. If this idea was real, how would this chainsaw copycat be able to take out Fall, a primal fear, let alone sneak up on her? Now I can loosely defend that in saying that Fall isn't really aggressive. Fall has been the most peaceful, kind of neutral primal fear that we have seen. If it was darkness, completely different story, but Fall, very nonchalant. But still, I don't think the abilities nor capabilities line up with the amount of fear and love that Chainsaw Man actually receives. I don't know why it would spawn a copycat though, if that makes sense. Like yes, it would take the imagery of Chainsaw Man as a devil, but wouldn't that technically mean that all of the fear and love that Chainsaw Man receives no longer receives it because it's been born into another devil? Do you see how you kind of get into a loophole design then? And if people found out that this was a copycat or like the Chainsaw Man devil away from Chainsaw Man, you would technically be able to loophole that again into something else entirely. The fear of Chainsaw Man as a copycat. Do you see how convoluted and kind of all over the place and a little bit messy it becomes? It's kind of the biggest reason why I'm not a fan of it. Again, I like the idea, but if there's just more to go off or more information that we can work with, the possibilities of how that's a thing, then I might be more persuaded. The second idea is one that I brought up a while back, and one that I'm kind of slowly building upon with the loose amount of information that we're getting. Firstly, this person looks a little bit different. They look slender than the first fake Chainsaw Man copy that we got. That person looked massive, huge, buff. This person a little bit smaller and sleeker. So is there two copycats of Chainsaw Man? And the more that I thought about it, the more that I think that this is the work of Fami, and an idea that I brought up a while ago. I think to connect all of this kind of nicely together in a way that somewhat, as of now, loosely makes sense, is that Famine is creating Chainsaw Man clones, and the way that she is doing this is with her power. There is no, I guess, acknowledgement towards this. Again, it's a complete theory, but I'm going off stuff that we have already seen and the capabilities of the horsemen themselves. Makima had the innate ability to control people entirely and basically rewrite their whole existence to be a pawn for her. Now that makes sense for her ability. What would you do with Famine? Now naturally, you're not wrong to think, oh, they just deal with food. But knowing Fujimoto and knowing that devils represent a large scope of their actual abilities, it's not just directly that. If she has growth, then she also has decline. If she can fertilize, she can take away. The representation of Famine is balance, give and take. Take those steps to the design of Famine, how she's connected to Fall, this whole situation, and she wears the Chainsaw Man ripcords as her earrings. They're very weirdly similar. We then see a Chainsaw Man ripcord out of Harumi, the first person who we thought was the fake Chainsaw Man coming out of his chest, but then he weirdly declined it, saying that he's just a big fan and for some reason he got surgery to get a ripcord out of his chest. I don't believe it. But do I believe Harumi is the first big buff fake Chainsaw Man that we've seen? No. I actually think it's the other guy. Do you remember the 3 individuals that were behind Fami, the group that she was with? There was a smaller guy, there was a big guy, there was a swordswoman that got chucked out the window. The people that survived had some injuries. So what I think Famine has done is that she is controlling them and she's creating fake Chainsaw Men by rebalancing abilities. Pretty much what I think she can do is take someone's abilities by using a portion of them, which I think is Denji's ripcord, replicate it and put it into other people to create versions of that devil that already exist. It'd be a very powerful ability, especially if they're pawns of her. I don't think we've seen Harumi yet, at least in the fake Chainsaw Man form. I do believe he is one, but I think this person at the end of the chapter is the more smaller and slender person, a part of Fami's group. The first fake Chainsaw Man, the big buff one, is the bigger guy that we've seen. That's like missing an eye. Now, if Fami can actually do this, why? That is the hardest thing to kind of pinpoint currently. She's working very diligently to kind of avoid Chainsaw Man in his entirety. She has not put any attention onto him whatsoever, has barely mentioned him if at all, and has focused solely on Asa. So I think either it's going to be someone that is obsessed with Chainsaw Man, which we haven't really seen before. Straight away you're going to say Makima, but that's a different infatuation. I genuinely think Fami might be obsessed, like a big fan of Chainsaw Man, and in a way trying to aid anything that he is doing, and maybe getting a little bit jealous that Asa, more so Yoru, is hunting Chainsaw Man. So what better way to throw Yoru off her trail is to create duplicates of Chainsaw Man to protect him. So the people that hunt down Chainsaw Man are now hunting down the fake copycats, and that's to throw Yoru off Chainsaw Man's real trail. Now, as much as I like kind of thinking about this and conjuring up ideas, it's kind of a glaring issue. What is Fami trying to do with Fall? Because this situation seems entirely manufactured by her, and the best way that you can kind of gauge this is the very specific door that is within Hell, right? Go back and read the chapter, have a look at the door and look at the designs. There's the tinted glass mosaic stuff that's on it, right? Nothing really all too important, but then you go look at the volume cover with Fami on it, and it's the exact same thing. That door most likely represents her, which makes sense if you think about famine, if she has anything to do with plants and growth in general, it kind of fits the appearance. She is the balance between life and death, and she can give it but also take away. Add on top of that the idea that she's using Fall, someone that is a lot more powerful than her, to get rid of Yoru to potentially protect Chainsaw Man, then you have a pretty interesting playing field. What really cements this idea for me as of this point, because we don't really have much information, is that the mysterious copycat gives Denji the exact way to avoid Fall. And your question is, well, why wouldn't Fami just say avoid Chainsaw Man? I don't think it's that simple. I don't think Fami has gone out of her way to attack Chainsaw Man. If anything, he's been caught up within this moment on his own regard because he's trying to save Asa. They don't even care that Chainsaw Man is here, which is kind of odd when you think about it. A lot of the horsemen should have beef with Chainsaw Man, should want him dead, very similar to Yoru because they've fought before. But if they do have this type of history, the horsemen are going to feel very different about him. The same way that Makima wanted to become one with him, the same way Yoru wants to completely end his life, and Famine may be obsessed, may love him, may be willing to aid him in every way possible. I keep adding to this and I don't mean to, I apologize, but just think about what Denji wants right now. He really wants to be intimate with someone, and Famine, if she is by whatever means obsessed with Chainsaw Man, he might actually get it from her. She may be willing to offer it. She may be trying to seek that type of intimacy. Knowing how Fujimoto writes, I don't think a lot of this is a coincidence. At least it lines up pretty nicely, but there's probably a whole bunch of specifics and ideas that I've completely missed from there. But at this point in time, this is what I'm thinking. And I kind of like the idea. The beginning of the chapter is really fun. This is where Denji kind of goes into more detail about how he thinks being intimate with people is really beautiful, and he's actually expressing himself in a pretty detailed way. You don't see this often from Denji. A lot of the times he gets overwhelmed or he just kind of shouts a basic variation for it, but now he's supplying results, he's giving answers, and he genuinely thinks it's a good thing. And even though it's directed inwards to being personal, he's still offhandedly helping Asa focus on something else entirely. She's no longer panicking or freaked out, she's kind of getting more angry, and this is what I love about their dynamic. Asa is not able to express herself freely. Denji is the only person that allows her to do it because he gets her angry, and he doesn't really respond in a way that is detrimental or traumatizing or abusive or disgusting, whatever it may be, he kind of just gets annoyed himself sometimes, or he gets really defensive. So they're very similar in that way. And that's why I think they pull the best parts out of each other to really allow themselves to be themselves. It's very cute how Asa gets defensive about the idea of being intimate with someone, because that's also what she wants. But when Denji gives it to her in a way that is very much detailed, she gets grossed out and calls him a creep and just a weirdo in general. And then in typical Asa fashion, she gets offensive. She says that no one would ever want to sleep with Chainsaw Man because you have it sticking out of your head. That's disgusting. And then you get this beautiful panel of them flipping around. So Asa's kind of fine at this point. She's not the one freaking out. Denji is the one that pulls him up into hell because he's freaking out about the words that Asa was saying. I think this is a very simple but brilliant way to show growth. Denji has matured a lot, but he still succumbs to a lot of the personal connections that other people may bring onto him when it comes to destroying his perfect viewpoint of the things that he wants. This is a great thing though. Being challenged on your viewpoints allow you to grow. And this is how Denji has gotten to this point mentally and emotionally, because he has been challenged. He's come a long way, and Asa being a challenge to him and vice versa, mind you, results in these two balancing each other out and bringing both the best and the worst. For me, it's kind of poetic. Of course, you get the brutality of hell, you get to see the worm creature, the beautiful imagery of Denji and Asa on a plate being prepped to be fed to that worm, and that's when they run through Famine's door and you get to see Fall being devoured by Chainsaw Man Copycat number 2. As always, Fujimoto has surprised us. He has given us a lot to think about, a lot to chew on, but I definitely am more curious to hear all of your thoughts about the fake Chainsaw Man, about Denji doing his best to save Asa, even though he kind of tries to get rid of her halfway through as a joke, but you know, we're gonna bypass that. And more so the future. Is Fami really the one orchestrating this whole Nostradamus prophecy and Denji's just accidentally wound up in here? Let me know how you felt about the chapter, your thoughts, your concerns, etc, etc. I want to hear everything right now. Thank you for watching.